Some people are completely different when it's just you. One-on-one, they're easy. They laugh at the same things. They talk to you like they actually know you, because they do. Then someone else walks in. A coworker, a mutual friend, doesn't matter who. And the version of them you know quietly leaves the room. They don't announce it. Nothing obvious happens. But the ease disappears, the warmth is gone, and they're talking to you differently, slightly more distant, maybe even a little dismissive, and you're sitting there trying to figure out what just happened. Here's what I'm going to tell you in this video. That shift is not about you. It never was. But understanding what it is about, and why most people respond to it in a way that makes things worse, is going to change how you read every room you walk into after this. Most people who experience this spend the next hour trying to figure out what they did wrong. You didn't do anything. What you ran into happens between almost every pair of people the moment a third person enters the equation. It has a name, it has a mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. When it's just the two of you, the only thing being managed is the relationship. Their version of themselves is calibrated to you, to your history, to the comfort that exists between you. The moment someone else walks in, a second calculation starts running. How do I look to them? And for a lot of people, that second question overrides the first one almost immediately. Not because they're manipulative, because status pressure is one of the most automatic things the human brain responds to. The warmth doesn't disappear because they stopped caring about you. It disappears because they started performing. A performance has a completely different goal than a conversation. A conversation is trying to connect. A performance is trying to land. And what they're landing for isn't you. It's the room. So they shift into a version of themselves they believe reads better in front of witnesses. Cooler, more detached, more subtly dominant in how they talk to you. Because talking down to someone slightly, in front of others, can feel like a status move that works. They are not managing the relationship anymore. They are managing witnesses. That phrase explains more social confusion than almost anything else. When someone has an audience, their behavior stops being about you and starts being about what the audience records. You are not the audience. You became the content. And that realization, when it hits, tends to sting. Not because it's dramatic, because it's accurate. You were sitting in what felt like a real conversation, and the other person had already quietly turned it into a scene. The problem is what most people do next. Because the instinctive response to that shift doesn't protect you. It makes things worse. When someone turns cold on you in front of others, the instinct is to either pull back and go quiet or lean in and try harder. Get more engaging, more accommodating, more visibly friendly, trying to signal that everything's fine. Both moves have the same problem. They accept the frame that the switch was about you. The moment you start adjusting to recover what was there privately, you've shown everyone in that room something. That your steadiness depends on how someone else is treating you. And once people see that, you become easier to unsettle. The person who switched has, without doing anything explicit, just discovered a lever. So what actually works? You don't reorganize yourself around their performance. You stay where you were, not as a power move, not to make a point. You stay because their decision to perform for a room is not a reason for you to change how you're operating. Keep the same tone, the same ease, the same level of engagement you had before the room filled up. Here's the mechanism. When one person switches and the other doesn't, it creates a gap. The room notices that gap. The person who didn't switch reads as more grounded, more secure. You don't have to say anything. You just have to not move. If the switch was cold enough that something needs to be said, the line that works is quieter than you'd expect. You doing okay? Genuinely, not sarcastically. Names the shift without attacking it. It says, I noticed. I'm not rattled. And I'm giving you a way out of whatever you're performing right now. Most of the time that's enough. The performance deflates because it needed you to react or comply, and you did neither. Here's what this looks like in real life. Workplace. You and a coworker have been friendly for months. Easy back and forth, no performance. Then your manager joins the table at lunch. Your coworker, mid-sentence, stops talking to you. They swivel toward the manager. The warmth disappears. At one point, they gently correct something you said in a way they'd never do if you were alone. Wrong move. Go quiet or try harder to get included. Right move. Keep going at the same level. Talk to the manager directly, as yourself, without performing. The manager, who has seen this dynamic many times, notices which person changed and which one didn't. Friend group. You're close with someone one-on-one. But in the group, they're different. More sarcastic, more likely to make a small joke at your expense. Just enough to be real. Just subtle enough that addressing it directly feels like an overreaction. They're using you as a prop. A small, reliable source of contrast that makes them look a certain way in front of others. Reacting gives them the scene they're staging. Ignoring it entirely reads as consent. The move. Name it without heat. That was a little unnecessary. Said easily, no charge, not as an accusation, just a note. It puts the awkwardness back where it belongs and gives them nothing to escalate from. Meeting. You and a colleague spent 20 minutes before the call working through an approach together. You built the logic. They added the framing. It felt collaborative. Then the call starts, leadership is on, and they walk through the whole thing. Your logic, your framing, in first person, singular, like you weren't part of the conversation that produced it. And you sit there doing the math. Do I say something? Do I let it go? If I say something now, does it look petty? If I don't, does it happen again next time? The answer isn't silence, and it isn't a scene. We actually developed that together. Said once, cleanly, no heat. Not as an accusation, just as a correction. Anyone in that room who matters will remember it. And so will they. Most people doing this aren't calculating against you. They're responding to an audience the way people who've never felt fully secure always respond. By switching to the version of themselves they think works better in public. It's reflexive. Most of the time they don't even realize they did it. That doesn't make it fine. But it makes it less about you than it feels. Once you see the performance for what it is, a status management move, not a verdict on you, it stops having the same pull. You stop trying to recover something that was never lost. You stop adjusting yourself around a scene that wasn't really about you. What's left, after all of that, is actually a useful question to sit with. Not about them, about you. What version of you shows up when the room fills? The person who doesn't need to switch, who's recognizably the same in private and in public, is genuinely harder to move. Not because they're performing stability, because they stop needing the room's approval to know where they stand. You can't control who performs for witnesses. You can control whether you become one of them.